In today's video, I'm going to focus on the night of the murders, the crime scene, and the autopsy reports. Welcome back. My name is Xana Kernodle. This is Grizzly True Crime. I hope you'll consider subscribing. And please know that this case and this episode in particular comes with a massive trigger warning. Please note that this content is for educational purposes and for adults only. Viewer discretion advised. More details available in the description box. So if you haven't seen my other videos in, I suppose, the series yet, the reason I'm doing this is because the Moscow Police Department has actually released a lot of public records. 314 documents were made public after Bryan Kohberger was sentenced. Remember that he pleaded guilty to all charges on July 2nd of 2025, and on July 23rd of 2025, he was sentenced to life without parole and swiftly transported to the Idaho maximum security institution where he is now for the rest of his life, unless they move him out of state, which could happen, who knows. But since the reports have been released, there's so much information in there that I wanted to categorize it for you. So in the first video in the series, we looked at Bryan Kohberger's police interview, which lasted about 45 minutes, but then he lawyered up as soon as they started asking about the night of the murders and the actual murders. Then also in that video was what inmates had observed about him. In the second video, I focused on creepy coincidences in the weeks leading up to the murders. So now in the third video, what we're going to do is focus on what I told you we would. The night of the murders, which was November 13th of 2022 in Moscow, Idaho, where 4 University of Idaho students, Ethan Chapin, Madison Mogen, Kaylee Goncalves, and Xana Kernodle, were murdered in this home, which has since been demolished, but it was standing at 1122 King Road. Now, I did want to make this little picture for you because I think it'll be helpful. I'll put it up on the screen every now and then just so that you can orientate yourself. So where the front door is, it faces north, and then the back of the house faces south. And then this side is east, and the other side is west. And let me just clarify a few things because I saw some people confused in the comments of video number 2. So firstly, the house has 3 layers, 6 bedrooms. There was Bethany Funk and Dylan Mortensen in the house that survived, that were unharmed that night. The bedroom all the way on this side, I'll move myself over here, was actually generally an empty room. They used it for Kaylee and Maddie's computers, some golf clubs, and just really storage, right? This room over here, Xana and Ethan's room, although Ethan stayed at the fraternity, he stayed over here sometimes, and he was sleeping over in Xana's room. They were dating, right? And then on the same floor, the second floor, so ground floor is Bethany's room and the storage room, shall we call it? The second floor here, these windows are actually pointing at the living area, the living room. And then towards the back, same floor, is Dylan Mortensen's room. And that's important because she saw the killer, Bryan Kohberger, walking from Xana's room, basically walking past her door and out the sliding door. So that's where her room is. And then here on the top floor, the third floor, right? Some people call it second if it's 0, 1, 2, or if we say 1, 2, 3. The top floor is where Madison Mogen and Kaylee Goncalves had rooms, and they also had a bathroom up there. Now this window is actually the bathroom window. And if I didn't make it clear in video number 2, it's that other side. The back of the house is where Madison Mogen's room is on the east side, and Kaylee's room was on the west side, and Murphy was found in Kaylee's room. Now these things are important that I wanted to reiterate because, firstly, knowing where Dylan saw Bryan Kohberger walk past, and secondly, knowing that the DoorDash driver was looking in this window and saw someone in it. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, and as I said, I'll pop it up on the screen every now and then when we need that. So what I'm going to do now is bring up the documents, and what I did was I've categorized all 314 documents into different things. One would be this, which is now all about the night of the murders, the timeline, the crime scene, what the police first saw. Now, a lot of information in this is going to be a repeat, but it's very interesting to hear how the different police officers write about what they saw, what they observed, right? So we've got 31 pages to go through, which is actually not too bad, because this binder that I made, that I'm going to put on Patreon. So if you are not yet on Patreon, you can join the public or free tier, and you will have access to this document. I think you just have to sign up with your name and email, and then you're in, right? And it's free. And I've also posted the other documents from video 2. So each video has accompanying documents that I'm posting on Patreon if you do want to check it out. By the way, thank you to everyone who actually supports me on Patreon. Thank you, meaning the dollar supporters. Oh my word, thank you so, so much. You make it possible for me to do this full time. So this binder will also be there. The binder itself is all the reports that are sorted into this category, and it's 72 pages, but we're only going to be looking at the highlighted parts, which is why I'm telling you where to find the documents. So that if you want to read every single word yourself, if you think, well, why didn't you read that? Well, then we'd be here forever, right? So I'm focusing on what I'm focusing on today. Now we're going to start on page 27 out of this binder. And so let's start with this narrative, right? And so we know that the murders happened on November 13th of 2022. So it says that approximately 11:56, MPD officers responded to an unconscious call.
911 location of your emergency. What is the address of the emergency?
1122.
The RPD, later identified as BF, so that's Bethany Funk, reported her roommate was passed out, not conscious, not breathing. As I was preparing to leave the station, Officer Nunez, who was already on the scene, advised of a likely homicide and asked for additional units. While I was en route, Officer Nunez advised he had located 2 additional victims. The victims were later identified as Kaylee Goncalves, Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, and Madison Mogen. Moscow MS was asked to stage and not respond to the scene unless requested. I also want to quickly show you this just to clarify, because yesterday I was just pointing at the side of the house and I was reminding you of what they said could have been blood dripping down the wall. This is a picture of Xana's room. And so you could see it's this little area, between Xana's room and the kitchen where there was fluid, red fluid dripping down the wall. Okay, so if you look at that picture, you see it, right? And now you look at this picture where it says a K for Xana Kernodle, Ethan Chapin. It's on the west side, but just around the corner there by the kitchen, right? That's where that was. Okay, back to the document. So this says, upon arrival, I saw HJ crouching near the entrance to 1122 King Road. Jay was in obvious emotional distress. I entered through the first floor door, which faces north towards the parking lot. Okay, wait. I'm just going to show us every now and then. Entered through the front door, which faces north towards the parking lot. That's where the officers went in. Okay, so then it says, I announced myself as a Moscow police officer and heard Officer Nunez and Warner respond from upstairs. When I got to the second floor, I saw a female covered in blood in the bedroom on the northwest side of the second floor. I actually think it's going to be very helpful to have this here at all times. So hold on one second. We'll put it over here so that you could still see all the writing nicely, and you can also reference the image. All right, so the second floor, remember there's the ground floor going the front door, then they go up the stairs, and now they're on that second floor where Dylan's room was. There was a living room, there's a bathroom, and Xana's room. And so it says, I looked inside the bedroom. Xana was laying, and it was obvious an intense struggle had occurred. Okay, Xana was obviously deceased. There was blood smeared on various items in the room and all over the floor. Oh my word, there was blood cast off on the walls in various places, including above Xana's body. Xana was on her back on the floor in the center of the room with her head towards the west, and Xana was in her underwear and a long-sleeved gray shirt. Both her shirt and underwear were covered in blood. Xana's face and body was covered in dried blood. I could see what appeared to be defensive knife wounds on Xana's hands. There was a deep gash on Xana's left hand between her pointer finger and her thumb. A partially covered male was on the bed and also obviously deceased. I believe this male to be Ethan. The midsection of Ethan's body was covered with a blanket. Ethan's head wasn't visible and appeared to be between the bed and the south wall. So, I am so sorry that we have to even say this, but I would speculate that if that was blood on the walls, it would be Ethan's. I know people wondered about that, right? Based on the orientation of everything. If you look at the picture, if you look where the blood was, which again was here, right? Okay. So, but it just sounded like, wow, what a scene, shame that these officers walked in on, right? So then it says, there was some blood cast off and what appeared to be arterial blood spray above where Ethan's head was located. I proceeded upstairs to the 3rd floor where I met Officer Nunez and Warner. Officer Nunez and Warner advised the residence was clear of any additional people. There was a dog belonging to Kaylee in the 3rd floor west bedroom, which as you can see there, that would have been Kaylee's room, which has access to a 3rd floor deck. The deck has no exterior access to the ground level. I asked Corporal Snyder to cordon off the area and Officer Nunez to start identifying the subjects that were on the scene when he arrived. I asked Officer Warner to start a crime scene log at the front entrance. Once Officer Smith arrived on scene, I asked him to stand guard at the kitchen sliding door, which I later learned was ajar upon our arrival. So you're going to hear from these multiple reports, there's a couple of conflicting statements. Like, Dylan says she thinks she heard the sliding door close. But then at some point in an interview, she also thought that it was left open. The officers also found it open. And the same goes for the front door. There's some questions that I have about the front door. If it was standing open, if a neighbor saw it open between 9 and 11 in the morning, but then when the friends arrived, because Dylan and Bethany called them over to help them because they were scared, they said they had to put the code into the front door. So then the door was closed. So there are questions. Who closed the front door? If people, including the surviving roommates, heard Murphy barking outside, then when did Murphy return to the house? And was the door closed to Kaylee's bedroom? Okay, so those are some questions. Now, let me know if there's any questions that come up for you or anything like that as you hear this information. So Murphy, as we could see there, it says there was a dog belonging to Kaylee in the 3rd floor west bedroom, which has access to a 3rd floor deck. Okay, so then it says on the 3rd floor, I went to the southeast, so easy to picture there, southeast bedroom, whom I believe, let's start that sentence again. On the 3rd floor, I went to the southeast bedroom where Officer Nunez and Warner advised they found 2 females, whom I believe to be Kaylee and Madison. Both females were obviously deceased. I observed Kaylee lying on the north side of the bed and Madison lying on the south side of the bed with their heads towards the east. Kaylee and Madison were covered by a pink blanket which was covered in blood. There was a large pool of blood near Kaylee's midsection. There was blood cast off on the east and north walls above Kaylee and Madison. Madison appeared to be laying up against Kaylee. Madison had what appeared to be wounds to her forearm and hands. Madison had a gash under her right eye, which appeared to go from the corner of her eye to her nose. Kaylee was unrecognizable as her facial structure was extremely damaged. Now, I do just quickly want to say, remember that we heard that Bryan Kohberger had been Googling sexual interests related to drugged girls, passed out girls, things like that. Well, it sounds like, that he may not have expected Kaylee to be there. I'm speculating. And her fighting back as hard as she did, I think it made him very, very angry because it ruined his fantasy. That's my speculation. I also say that because Xana had similar injuries to her face, whereas Madison Mogen had a gash under her right eye, which appeared to go from the corner of her eye to her nose, but the injuries to her face were not as severe as Kaylee and Xana's were. Kaylee being the worst, right? Okay, so I asked Officer Nunez to close the door to the bedroom so the dog did not try to disturb the scene. Other than that action, MPD patrol officers left the scene as it was found. I was later confirmed with Officer Nunez that no EMS personnel entered prior to my arrival. Okay, so we've read through those pages. Now we're going to go to page number 30. This says, when I arrived, I entered the residence and went to the second floor. So let me just go above here so that you could just see the initial here, just the report number and everything, name Corbin Smith, right? On the 13th of November of 2022. When I arrived, I entered the residence and went to the second floor. I observed a female wearing a sweatshirt and underwear laying in the middle of the bedroom floor covered in blood. I observed deep lacerations indicative of defensive wounds on the female's hands. So this would be Xana. The female was surrounded by blood on the floor. I observed a male laying on the bed. The male appeared to have suffered from stab wounds and a laceration to the neck. The male was covered in blood and the bedding around him was soaked in blood. In the third floor bedroom, I observed two females laying in bed which appeared to have been stabbed to death. The female laying on the left half of the bed, as I looked at it from the doorway, was unrecognizable. So that would be Kaylee. Her face was completely disfigured and was stabbed several times. I was unable to comprehend exactly what I was looking at while trying to discern the nature of the injuries. The second female on the right half of the bed had multiple stab wounds. The comforter was soaked in blood and a pool of blood was still present. I was assigned to hold security at the rear slider door. This was the alleged point of entry of the suspect. I observed very large footprints in the snow. I used tape measure and the shoe size measured approximately 13.5 to 14 inches. That's absolutely massive. That is so strange. I do wonder if Bryan Kohberger, with all his criminology and criminal justice experience, if he had, I would suspect that he would go stomping around there in shoes way bigger than his own. You know what I mean? I don't know. What do you make of that? Those are some massive footprints. Now, they did say the footsteps went to and from the rear slider door. I observed the trail of footsteps head away from the slider and then turn right around a stump in the backyard and then lead toward the front of the house. I observed a set of small handprints on the window to the east of the slider. The screen to this window appeared damaged and was laying on the ground. I located smudged fingerprints on the glass slider door. There was a discarded black backpack in the backyard. I photographed these items and attached them to the case. Now, in other reports, they did say they didn't find anything in the backpack because, oh my, I was so curious about what do you mean there was a backpack in the backyard? Huge footprints, an empty backpack. Who knows what that was for? Of course, there is room for speculation that this could have been anyone else's footprints, anyone else's backpack, anyone else's fingerprints, because a lot of people went in and out of this home, right? Okay, so if you just look at the picture again, you can kind of picture how the killer would have exited the sliding door at the back there, which is below the balcony that you see jutting out on the right. Okay, so, and then turning right around that tree stump. I'm sure you could see that, right? Now, what I'm going to do is actually show you a clip from Asget Industries because it was so well done, and it's a timeline of, you know, these murders, of what happened. And this lady, the owner of Asget Industries, which I've linked to her channel in the description box for you, was actually hired by Dateline to make this 3D model. So have a look at this. If you I'm sure you've seen it. Many of you have seen it before, right? But if not, let's refresh ourselves and watch this clip.
Kohberger drives to the back parking lot away from other residences. He takes a few minutes looking around and sees that nobody's out and that all is quiet. He eventually grabs his things, gets out of the vehicle, and begins walking to the back of the home. At approximately 4:13 a.m., he begins to make entry. As he steps in, he takes a minute to make sure everything is quiet and that nobody is truly up. He walks to the entrance of the living room and looks around. He continues to be cautious and stands there listening. Feeling confident, he continues upstairs. As he makes
So this would be going up to the top floor to Madison Mogen's room and where Kaylee Goncalves' room was as well. At this point, I don't know exactly where Murphy was. Was he running around? Did Kaylee close him in her room or what, right? But this is so helpful to also see the layout of the house from inside the home.
his way to Maddie's room. The time is about 4:14. Meanwhile, 2 minutes later, Xana takes a break from TikTok and walks into the kitchen. Evidence shows her activity on the app stopped at 4:16.
So if we just go back a second here and we look at this picture, it's nice to now see where you see DM and then the windows just below that DM, that would be looking into this living room. Where the figure is now, which in this 3D model would be Xana, on the left is Dylan's bedroom door. So the killer would have come from where she came from, round the corner, straight past Dylan's door, and then turning right to go outside through the kitchen and through the sliding door. Okay, so let's continue on here.
Shows her activity on the app stopped at 4:16. As she enters the kitchen, she's a little shocked to see the sliding glass door wide open. And at the same time, she hears a serious commotion going on upstairs. A source revealed that Xana's phone recorded steps and elevation change, which is how it's known she went to the kitchen and the third floor. When she walked up to Maddie's doorway, she interrupted Kohberger, who had just finished an intense battle with Kaylee, who fought back violently. After a second or two, he notices her, and then she turns away. Being dark, Xana didn't realize what she was seeing other than a shadowy figure. Out of fear, she quickly leaves. A single source, unaffiliated with the media, claims Kohberger injured Xana on the third floor hallway, leaving evidence of blood there. But this single source of information has not been validated by any more sources. Continuing, Kohberger, without thinking, pursues her all the way to her room, not realizing he had dropped the sheath of his knife. When he gets to the room, he attacks Xana, and the time is precisely 4:17:30. We know this because of camera A captured the sound of screaming and the thud.
Now, even though the cameras captured those sounds, neighbors said they didn't hear anything out of the ordinary. And what's interesting as well, which we'll see from these documents today, people in the area said that that all the lights were on and music was still playing. Oh my word, that gave me chills. You know why? When they arrested Bryan Kohberger at his parents' house in Pennsylvania, they said on Dateline, so not in these documents, they said that Bryan Kohberger had been listening to the Britney Spears song Criminal, but it was a slow and reverb version of it, right? We've looked at that in previous videos before. I've literally linked the song for you if you want to go and listen to it. And it says, "Mama, I'm in love with a criminal." Now, that could just be a song that he really likes. But what I was thinking, it's just an idea I had, I'm speculating. Can you imagine if that song was playing while he was committing these murders? Because if there was music playing in the house, did he switch the music off afterwards? Was music still going at some point? Did the roommates switch the music off? You know what I mean? Anyway, can you imagine if that was the song that he heard while committing the murders, and that's why he was listening to it, maybe on repeat for what we know? That's pure speculation. The thought just entered my mind.
After attacking Xana, Kohberger focuses his attention on Ethan and attacks him while he slept. Afterwards, Kohberger must have sat down in a chair, according to a report, which found blood smears on Xana's chair, perhaps from the exhaustion of what he had just done. This source also says that blood from the two roommates upstairs were found in Xana's room, showing that it was one person moving from one room to another. Kohberger sitting down was for less than 30 seconds. As he gets up to leave, Dylan, hearing the commotion from Xana's room, gets up out of bed and goes to her door to look out into the hallway. She freezes and sees Kohberger as he walks by and exits through the kitchen. She immediately closes and locks her door and retreats to her bed. Within 20 seconds of the encounter, she's calling and texting her roommates, but no one is responding. It takes Kohberger a minute and a half to get to his vehicle after the encounter with Dylan. But once in his car, he flees the scene at a high rate of speed and exits the neighborhood at 4:20. Dylan continues trying to reach someone in the house. and after 3 minutes of trying, Bethany wakes up in response to the calls. They converse for 3 minutes, and then Beth convinces Dylan to come downstairs. The time is now 4:26 a.m. Cautiously, Dylan walks into the hallway and through the living room. As she approaches the staircase, she can see into Xana's room and sees her laying on the floor.
Okay, I quickly want to show you an image from that. So just hold on 1 second. I want to show you how dark it could have potentially been when DM looked, and just saw, oh, so like Xana's lying on the floor. She had said in some interviews that, if someone was very intoxicated, they might just be passed out and sleeping on the floor. They'd also said that sometimes Xana slept on the floor when she was intoxicated. So just bearing that in mind, walking past this wouldn't be like seeing a pool of blood. It's very dark, as you can see. This is an example, okay? So if we go back to the clip quickly.
She then runs quickly downstairs to Beth's room, where they lock the door and for several hours continuously try contacting the other roommates.
It says, as I arrived, Officer Nunez advised me that over the air it appeared to be a homicide. I saw a small group of females outside the home in the parking lot. One female advised that their roommate was on the second floor and needed help. I went to Officer Nunez's location at the west bedroom on the second floor and passed a male in the living room, later identified as HJ. Officer Nunez advised the female and a male in the bedroom had blood on them and appeared to be beyond help. I walked out of the bedroom toward Jay and saw a clean steak knife on a beer pong table. I pointed out the knife to Nunez. Jay said that he got the steak knife from the kitchen because he arrived and saw the female on the bedroom floor covered in blood and did not know if there was anyone else present in the room. He said that he checked the room with the knife for protection. I really think that HJ, which I think we know now is Hunter, right, was so brave. To go in there and be like, he just went into such a protective mode. He didn't want anyone else to see what he was seeing. And then when he realized, oh my goodness, like, wow, my friends are dead, he immediately went to get a steak knife and then walked around and opened a closet as well at some point to see if there was anyone in there. So he was ready to fight, for everyone else's protection. Officer Nunez and I walked to the first floor entrance with H. I asked the females and H if there was anyone else in the apartment, and they did not know. I told Officer Nunez the home was not secure and we started the process of clearing it. On the third floor, in the southeast bedroom, I saw 2 clothed females laying on a bed on their backs who appeared deceased. One female on the left side of the bed in relation to the bedroom door had an extreme amount of lacerations to her face and upper body, which made her unrecognizable. The other female had multiple lacerations on her upper body and some blood on her face. I walked to the far side of the bed to determine if the female on the right was beyond help. I saw the female's leg was off the edge of the bed and it had lividity. Once I noticed the lividity in the female's leg, I backed out of the room. Officer Nunez and I checked the rest of the third floor and saw it was clear. There was a poodle in the west bedroom on the bed, which was later taken to the Humane Society by LCSO. So later they go into more detail of Murphy the dog being on the bed and then getting scared and going to hide under the desk. Okay, so I've got a list here of all the pages we're going over and I'm just ticking it off as we go. All right, so now we go to page 34 out of this binder that I've made. And when I put a green X like this, it's because they were actually referring to Xana, but they mixed up the names for a moment there and they wrote Kaylee, okay? But they do correct it later. So it's not like I'm just guessing and correcting. They, at the end of this report, say initially they thought it was Kaylee with Ethan, but it was actually Xana, right? Okay, so this narrative, as you can see from Mitch Nunez, says, we can go again from the 13th of November of 2022 at approximately 11:56 hours. I responded to an unconscious subject at 1122 King Road in Moscow, Idaho. Upon my arrival, I found a large gathering of people in the parking lot immediately north of the 1122 King Road residence. 1122 King Road is a white 3-story single-family residence with multiple bedrooms. The 1122 designation is located directly above the front door facing north. I was directed to a bedroom on the second floor by HJ in the northwest corner to locate the unresponsive female. Upon entering the room, I observed a female laying supine on the floor next to a bed. According to DM, this female was likely, and there they wrote Kaylee Goncalves, but actually it was Xana. D also lived at 1122 King Road, so that would be Dylan Mortensen. I observed dried blood surrounding Xana's body and signs of cutting trauma to her face. So see, out of the 4 victims, 3 were female, and 2 out of those females had cutting trauma to their face. And Kaylee, I mean, she was unrecognizable with how much trauma there was to her face. So that's interesting to consider based on Madison Mogen's face being relatively unharmed, right? Like psychologically, it's kind of interesting even to think that the killer, Bryan Kohberger, decided to cut Ethan's legs. Okay, so redacted was covered in, so Xana was covered in so much blood, I wasn't able to immediately discern where any additional injuries would have likely been. She was apparently deceased due to her pale skin color, rigid body tone, and apparent blood loss. On the bed in the same room, I observed Xana. I observed a male lying supine on the bed. According to Dylan, the male was likely Ethan Chapin. Dylan said Ethan was commonly at the residence. I observed blood covering portions of Ethan's legs, surrounding his body into the bed sheets, and drops of blood on the wall near Ethan's head. As I backed out of this room, H showed me a kitchen knife and said that he had it in his possession. I told H to leave the knife and go back down the stairs to the front entrance. Officer Warner and I moved to visually clear the residence for any suspects or additional victims. On the 3rd floor, Officer Warner and I found 2 additional apparently deceased females, both laying supine in a bed. This bedroom was on the southwest corner of the 3rd floor. According to Dylan, these 2 females were likely Xana Kernodle and Madison Mogen. One female showed an apparent traumatic injury to her face due to the basic facial structure being unrecognizable. Both females showed very pale skin. Both females were covered in dried blood and apparently deceased. After the residence was deemed safe, Officer Warner and I exited the residence to secure it and the immediate area to include the parking lot immediately to the north of the residence. I walked outside and began interviewing Dylan. Dylan told me at approximately 4 in the morning, she heard a voice scream and believed it to be Kaylee's. She said she heard Kaylee scream and announced there's somebody inside the residence. She said she could hear Kaylee run from the 3rd floor down the stairs to the 2nd floor and into the northwest bedroom. I put the X there because I think that's more than likely Xana. Dylan said she locked herself in her bedroom and continued to hear a commotion. She said she eventually stopped hearing a struggle and heard a male voice say, "You're gonna be fine. I'm going to help you." Dylan said she did not recognize the male's voice. She said after a few minutes she peeked out of her bedroom and observed a male described as approximately 6 feet tall, slim build with a black ski mask leave the 2nd floor patio area. This patio door was likely left open as it was found open upon my arrival. I interviewed an additional roommate, which is Bethany Funk, who told me that she was at the residence during the commotion. She said she was on the 2nd floor in the living room watching Vampire Diaries with, I assume that would be Dylan, with Dylan, and an unidentified person named L. Bethany said at approximately 2 in the morning on the 13th of November of 2022, Madison and Kaylee came home from a night out at the Corner Club bar located in Moscow, Idaho. Bethany said that she also believed that Madison and Kaylee went to the Grub Wandering Kitchen truck, so the Grub truck that was commonly located in the 300 block of South Main Street. Bethany said that she and Madison let Madison's dog out, so it was Kaylee's dog, Murphy, sometime between 200 hours and 2:30. Bethany said during this time she observed no suspicious activity. She said she returned inside while Madison was still outside with Murphy. Bethany said that she went to bed around 2:30 hours. She said that Madison came into her bedroom sometime after 2:30 to ask if she knew where Murphy was. Bethany said she told Madison no, and Madison left. So now I don't know if they actually mean Kaylee when they're saying Madison. Remember, these are documents for the initial investigation. I think things had come a long way since then. right? This is from November 13th of 2022. I think a lot of progress was made since then, and I'm pretty sure they had everything all lined up ready for trial. And now, since there's going to be no trial, now this is what we have. Okay, but there are going to be some errors in some of these documents because it was like the initial stage of collecting all this information. So I don't know if it was Madison who asked, well, where's Murphy, or if it was Kaylee, but either way, there is yet another incident where they can't find Murphy. Like, did he run outside, and then was there already somebody there or not? All of that from video 2. If you didn't see video 2, the creepy coincidences, then check that out. Of course, this was too early for Kohberger to be in the area, but she didn't know where Murphy was. So Bethany said that she told Madison no, and Madison left. She said she woke up in her bedroom, which was located on the first floor, now this is interesting. I don't know quite what to make of this, but to a sound that she described as a firecracker and a flash. I mean, the first thing for me that came to mind was a taser. Like, I don't know. What do you mean? The sound of a firecracker and a flash? Okay, she woke up to that sound? Bethany said she initially thought the sound was a prank. According to Bethany's phone log she showed me, she called Xana at 4:21, Ethan at 4:22, Madison at 4:22, Madison again at 4:30, and then Kaylee at 4:31. She said she never received an answer on each phone call. She said she went back to sleep and woke up around 11:56 hours. Now here's the explanation that I told you about above, which says, initially I was told that Kaylee was likely located on the second floor bedroom with Ethan. After comparing Dylan's initial statement with other investigations, the officer's observations, it appeared to actually be Xana that was located on the floor of that bedroom, and Kaylee was one of the other females located in the third floor room. Now I can already hear there's going to be people saying, oh my word, why can't Dylan even get her story straight about her friends' names and where they were in the house? Well, I would think she was at that point extremely traumatized, knowing that, wait, what? My friends are dead in the house? I don't know. Or maybe the officers just mixed up the names, for all we know. That's why I just keep saying it's the initial reports, you know. Okay, so we've read page 35. Now we're going to page 37. And this says, name Ryan Snyder, also on the 13th of November of 2022. And it says that they responded on the 13th of November of 2022 at about 1200 hours to the 112 King Road home, right? As I was working around the residence, I noticed the back door was open and there were footprints in the snow coming from the back door on the back porch. Officer Smith took photos of these prints with a measuring tape. He watched the backyard area to make sure no one else came to the area. I noticed there were a few footprints that left toward the west of the backyard. This portion of the backyard is connected to two other residences, 1118 King Road and 1126 King Road, both directly to the west. The footprints appear to lead west toward King Road between the residences, but I was unable to see where the footprints went after the yards connected due to the amount of rock landscaping. I also was unable to discern how old these prints were. There had not been recent snowfall. So these reports from the early days of the investigation also do include looking at the ex-boyfriend of Kaylee, because, you know, Kaylee and Maddie had called him so many times, and he lived, you know, in that direction of where these footprints would go, and all of this. They went to go and look at his house, they interviewed him, all of that. So he was on their radar at first, which is normal in this investigation, as was Hoodie Guy from the grab truck. Yeah, Hoodie Guy, there's quite a few things that are like, interesting in these reports. But of course, since then, he's not part of the case, you know what I mean? So I'm just letting you know, because if you see some parts either of this document or future documents or previous documents we went over, and they're talking about Hoodie Guy, whose initials are JS, yeah, you might think, well, that's sus. We all thought it at the time, but it turned out to just be, as criminal profiler John Kelly would call it, the usual suspects, and not the actual killer. You know what I mean? Like John Kelly always says there's somebody sus that they first look at, right? But did not turn out to be involved in the case. Okay, so now we've looked at that page. So hold on one second. I'm just ticking off as I go. We're now on page 38 at this highlighted part here. It says, I spoke with subjects at Redacted King Road, the majority of them stated they were out drinking at the corner club and got a ride back to their place at about 1:30 hours and went to sleep about 2 in the morning. They did not hear anything out of the ordinary. Redacted King Road resident B, is that B? This does BF, yeah. Stated at about 400 hours. Oh, it's a different person. It's B. See, this could be a P. Okay. But at a different residence, not 1122 King Road, a neighboring resident, right, stated about 400 hours he heard a barking dog coming from the east of his residence. He believed it was the dog at 1122 King Road, as he thought that was the only dog in the area. Well, clearly not if neighbors were walking their dogs the next morning, but okay. He stated the dog sounded like it was outside and was barking for about 45 minutes until he believed someone must have let it inside at 4:45 when it stopped. Now, there's many scenarios there. Either Bryan Kohberger left the sliding door open and Murphy ran out and was barking in the woods, and eventually Murphy came back in and went upstairs to the room that he knew, which was Kaylee's room, where the officers found him. Or if he was outside and the door was closed, well, that would be interesting, because then who let him in, right? And maybe the police know exactly who let him in. Maybe they know who closed the front door. Maybe they know who let Murphy in. And they're just not putting it in these initial reports, right? Okay, so now we're going to go to page 43. And this says, name is Aaron Morris, the 17th of November of 2022, right? Okay, this says, on the 17th of November of 2022 at 14:30 hours, I responded to the University of Idaho Kibbe Dome to interview JN. Captain Barrett stated that N possibly had information regarding the homicide and took Detective Diane and myself to a conference room to speak. N stated that on Sunday, the 13th of November of 2022, between 900 hours and 1000 hours, so 9 and 10 in the morning, he was walking his dog. He stated that when he walked by the first time, he noticed the front door to 1122 King Road on the north side of the building facing campus was wide open. He stated that he knew it was a party house, so assumed someone was too intoxicated and forgot to close the door the night prior. And stated that he walked his dog up Taylor Avenue to Blake Avenue and then down Sweet Avenue. He said the walk took him approximately 1 hour. He stated that when he walked back to his apartment around 1100 hours, the front door was still wide open, so damn, between 9 and 11. Okay, he said that he was unsure if the information was known or not, but thought he should report it. Now, why is that interesting? Because when the friends that Dylan and Bethany called came over, the report says that they used the code on the front door to open the front door. But yet this neighbor saw the front door open between 9 and 11. So either the front door blew closed, maybe the wind did it, maybe Murphy closed the front door, maybe one of the surviving roommates closed the front door, for all we know. Okay, so then we have looked at that page as well. Oh my word, there's so much to go through here. Now we're going to some very upsetting graphic information, so be warned, we're going to look at the autopsy reports, okay? Even though we've already gone over some very, very hectic information. Okay, major crime prints. So this is, it says as part of the autopsies, major crime prints were taken from each of the victims by the Spokane County Forensic Units. So now I'm going to go down to the highlighted parts. At the conclusion of the 4 autopsies, Dr. V.S. met with Kathy Mabert, Gary Tolson, and myself and told us the following. Ethan Chapin's fatal injury was from a stab wound under his left clavicle, which severed his subclavian vein and subclavian artery, and also his jugular vein was severed. Ethan only had sharp force injuries. Xana Kernodle's fatal injuries were from 1 laceration in her right lung and 2 lacerations in her heart. Kernodle had 50 plus stab wounds, mostly defensive. Xana only had sharp force injuries. So people do ask, well, how did they not scream? How did no one hear them scream? Maybe one possibility is that they were, stabbed in the lung and couldn't scream, or just got such a fright, or maybe their mouths were covered, for all we know. But it just seems like blitz attacks. You know, it's just so violent and so fast, especially if you look at the time frame in which the murders were committed. Oh my goodness. Madison Mogen's fatal injuries included a left lung laceration and a liver laceration. Madison only had sharp force injuries. Kaylee Goncalves' fatal injuries included a left lung laceration, a liver laceration, 2 subdural bleeds, and a stab behind her clavicle which cut her subclavian vein and artery. So behind the clavicle is the collarbone. Kaylee had signs of sharp force injuries, asphyxial injuries, and blunt force injuries. Kaylee had 20 plus stab wounds. Kaylee's dad said it was 34 stab wounds. And in a recent interview, one of the lead detectives said that they don't actually know what weapon caused the injuries to Kaylee's face. It's a mystery to them. They don't know. I see people have speculated online, could it be like brass knuckles, or I don't know. Could it be a taser? Could it be the knife handle? I don't know. So Dr. S said that the weapon used was not serrated, single-edged, very sharp, and said a lot of force was used by the suspect. I will be uploading Dr. S's final autopsy reports to the case file when they are completed. Then it also said, on November 16th at approximately 19:55, I drove from Spokane County Medical's examiner's office to the FBI office located at, and here they say several of the clothing items collected during the autopsies were still wet and needed to dry in evidence dryers overnight. So that just tells you just how much blood there was. Okay, so we've read through those. Now we're going to page 52. This is a report from Lawrence Mowry. Sequence number says here 42, and it says, on November 13th of 2022, I was directed to interview potential witnesses in regards to the incidents at 1122 King Road. The following interviews were conducted at the Moscow Police Department. Interview 1, DM. On the 13th of November of 2022, DM Dylan Mortensen was interviewed in regard to the homicide investigation at 1122 King Road, and she said she was a resident of the house where the incident occurred. She said she was at a party at around 10:30 hours on the 12th of November of 2022, where she was drinking. She said she went to Redacted's house. She said she believed she arrived home between 12:30 and 1 in the morning on the 13th of November of 2022. She said that she thought Bethany arrived home around 20 minutes after she arrived. She said that she believed that Maddie and Kaylee arrived home at around 1:30 or 2 in the morning on the 13th of November of 2022. She said up to this, nothing weird had happened during the night. She said that she and her friend, Redacted, came home, followed by Bethany from Redacted. Dylan said Elle lived at the Redacted house and Bethany was her roommate at the residence. She said when Maddie Mogen and Kaylee Goncalves came home from the corner club at the same time, then everyone went to bed. She was asked about the layout of her house. Dylan said that Kaylee's room was directly above her room. She said that she lived on the 2nd floor and Kaylee lived on the 3rd floor. She said that Kaylee and Maddie both live upstairs on the 3rd floor in separate rooms. Dylan said that Xana lived closest to the bathroom on the 2nd floor and Bethany lived on the 1st floor. When asked about Murphy, she said it was a dog owned in common between Kaylee and her ex-boyfriend. In the previous video, I didn't mention that Murphy is with the ex-boyfriend, Jack, the co-owner of Murphy, and he actually launched an Instagram page for Murphy. So I'll link it in this video as well. It's also linked in the previous video. He said, Dylan said that there were no apparent issues between Kaylee and the ex, JD. And D, Dylan said that Maddie had a boyfriend named JS who was in Boise at the time of the incident. Now, that JS is different to the hoodie guy. Same initials, different guy, okay? Dylan indicated that Xana was dating Ethan Chapin, who was in the room with her at the time of the incident. Dylan did not know of anyone who would want to hurt Ethan when she was asked. Dylan was asked if she saw any cars in the area that should not be there, and she said, no, I was not really looking at that. Dylan said that she woke up around 400 hours 4 in the morning on November 13th of 2022, where she could hear Kaylee and Murphy, the dog, dancing. Dylan said she knew it was Kaylee because she recognized her voice and could hear Murphy barking. Dylan said that she heard Kaylee go upstairs and say, "There's someone here." Dylan said she thought she heard Kaylee run back down the stairs. Dylan said that Kaylee sounded scared when she made this statement. Dylan said at this time she jumped up and locked the door because she did not know what else to do. She said she called out Kaylee's name and did not indicate if she got a response. She said she then tried to call Kaylee, Xana, and Maddie on their phones. She was asked if she saw anyone come downstairs or heard anything. She said, "No, I didn't even know how they got in. We're usually pretty good about locking doors and never had problems before. It was just really random." When asked again about the series of events, Dylan said that she opened the door when she cried out to Kaylee and then closed the door because she was scared. She said she then opened the door again and heard who she thought was Kaylee but could have been Xana. Right? So could have been Xana crying in the bathroom. Dylan said she then heard a man's voice say, "It's okay. I'm going to help you." Dylan said it was weird because the statement was not in a nice way, and the voice was one that she'd never heard before. Dylan said she called out to Kaylee again. There was no crying after, and she did not know what happened after that. She said she opened the door again, and the guy is right there. She described the male as approximately her height, 5'10" or a few inches taller, not skinny but athletic build. She said the suspect was wearing all black with masks that covered just his forehead and goes around his face. She showed her hands. The mask exposed his nose but covered the mouth area. She said she believed that the suspect was white but did not remember eyebrow color or what his eyes looked like. She said when she saw the suspect, he saw her and just left. Dylan said that she believed that he was holding something near his stomach or belt line. Dylan used both hands to point straight out from her abdomen. She then moved her hands apart and back together to simulate a bulge. Dylan said this area was black in color, and she thought now maybe it was a gun. She said the unknown object had an arrow shape. Dylan seemed really unsure and said she was tired during the event. Now, this is the first that we hear that she thought maybe it was a gun. Because we've heard a vacuum type object. We've heard of a container. Now we're hearing it could have been a gun. And she's pointing straight out from her abdomen. And it was an arrow shape. What do you think it was? Dylan was asked how long she believed it was from the time that Kaylee said someone is here to when she saw the suspect. She said she thought it was about 10 or 20 minutes. She went on to say that she was in and out of it and she did not fully remember the incident. She was asked where the suspect was at in the residence when Dylan saw him. She said the suspect was between her bedroom door and the kitchen. She said she remembered watching the suspect go out the kitchen door and leave. She said at this time she closed the door and locked it as fast as she could. She said the suspect did not walk toward her or say anything. Interesting. So Bethany informed her that she heard a sound that sounded like a firework. Dylan then said that she told Bethany she called everyone and they are not answering. Dylan said that she was in and out of it and believed everyone was just asleep. She said that she then went to Bethany's room, locked the door, and went to bed. Dylan said she woke up around 11 or 12 and called her roommates, and no one answered. She said she called Bethany, not Bethany. She called H. H came to the residence, went upstairs, and told Dylan that they needed to call law enforcement immediately. Dylan was asked if there was anything else that she wanted to share. She said the noise that Bethany described was a loud boom. The noise was as a loud boom, but Dylan did not hear it. I do not know what that would be. Dylan was asked if any of her roommates shared any weird experiences in the last couple of weeks, or calls or texts. She said no, it's all been normal, nothing weird at all, nothing really weird happens in Moscow usually. When asked if there were any altercations at the party, she said no, everything was normal. Dylan mentioned again that she was with Dee and Xana at the party. Dee was asked if anyone was having sexual relations with anyone they shouldn't be, and she said no. She brought up an incident which occurred about a month prior. She said that she and Redacted remembered Kaylee saw a shadow while she was taking Murphy outside. She said that Kaylee also mentioned when she was at, which now we know it was Winco from video 2 in the series, that there was an individual following her. She also said that she arrived home one time and the door to the residence at 1122 King Road was found open. Dylan said she did not believe the slider door was locked the night of the 12th of November of 2022. She said she did hear Murphy barking a lot around 400 hours on the 13th of November of 2022 when Kaylee went upstairs. She said she heard Murphy go outside barking as well. So if you haven't seen the video right before this one on this playlist where we looked at the creepy coincidences, a lot of people asked, well, how did the roommates not hear Murphy outside? Well, they did. Dylan says she heard Murphy go outside and bark as well. But in previous documents, we've looked at just how much these college kids had to drink that night. It was a lot. Like Dylan had a lot and she was very confused about everything going on. But also they thought that this could have been a prank from like the fraternity, you know, or from all the boys there. They weren't too sure what to make of this. And Dylan and Bethany were kind of teased a little bit for being scaredy cats, for always scaring so easily and calling people over, like, can you come help us? Can you come look? So maybe they just thought, well, I don't know, let's not overreact again, right? But shame. In this scenario, it was the absolute worst nightmare that one could ever imagine. Dee was unsure if Murphy would chase a suspect outside. Dee says she did not remember if the suspect who ran left the slider door open. Okay, so now let's go to this interview number 2. And this says, H said around 1200 hours on the 13th of November of 2022, D called E, so Hunter's girlfriend, over. And D told E she thought something was not right in her house. D also told E she heard or saw a man in her house the night prior. D asked E and H to come over and make sure everything was okay because she locked herself in Bethany's bedroom. H said he was the first person to get to the residence. See, now here it says he said he entered the code to the front door where Bethany and Dylan were in Bethany's room on the first floor. Dylan and Bethany were telling H they did not know what was going on. Now H said that he went up the stairs and immediately went into Xana's room. He said this was the only room that he went into. He said when he approached the door, it was only partially open. He said when he opened it, he saw Xana and Ethan. He said that he initially did not realize all the blood was dried blood in the room. He said he thought at first they'd been drunk and left a mess. He said when he stood there for a moment, he began to realize what he was seeing. Which again, I'll say, well, if the roommates, like Dylan, she's scared, she's running downstairs to Bethany's room, and as she's running, she sees Xana lying on the floor in the doorway, and it's super dark, so she can't see all the blood. This is now daylight. This is like noon. And Hunter is going into this room and seeing blood everywhere. And at first, couldn't make sense of it. Same as the police at first, they're like, what am I even looking at, right? So, oh my goodness. They began to realize what he was seeing. He said that Bethany and Dylan were uncontrollably crying. He said that he told them to get out of the house and call law enforcement. He said he then went to the kitchen and grabbed a knife from the drawer. He said he then went to the room and checked the closet to make sure there was not anyone else in the room, which is very brave after seeing what happened to Xana and Ethan, and the room is covered in blood, to then go grab a knife and then go and open a closet just to see if maybe the perp was there, right? He's very brave. So he said that both of the bodies had rigor mortis and were cold with no breath or pulse. Okay, so now we're going to page 55 over here, interview 3. Jay said she texted Bethany at 11:20 on the morning of the 13th of November of 2022, so one of their friends. Bethany, she asked Bethany if she was awake. Jay said that Bethany called her back at 11:49. Bethany told Jay that she and Dylan, were in Bethany's room. Jay said that Bethany was freaked out because her roommates were not answering the phone. Jay said she heard Dylan on the phone in the background saying, I saw something. Jay said that Bethany asked her to come over to 1122 King Road and pick her up. Jay said that Bethany texted her while she was driving there and said E and H were on the way as well. She said as she arrived, MPD units were arriving as well. So there's that narrative, and if we just go down to this one, Jay said that she knew that Kaylee saw a dark figure staring at her from the tree line when she took her dog Murphy out to pee. She said this occurred about a month ago at 1122 King Road. She said there has been light-hearted talk and jokes made about a stalker in the past. Jay said all the girls were slightly nervous about it being a fact, though. So even though, like, ha ha ha, imagine, like, you know, the guy standing there in the tree line, maybe there's a stalker, they were nervous about it. Jay did not indicate any social media issues or issues between the girls who lived together. She said there was no issue with the girls from the sorority and the residents at 1122 King Road. She said the front door had issues with locking and sometimes it could be opened without a code. She said she did not know the code to the front door and said that she was unsure if the residents kept the back sliding door locked regularly. Interview 4 says, L said that H and E came into the room where he and Jay were. L said that D had called E around 10 o'clock in the morning and sounded scared. They said that Dylan told E someone had been in her house last night. So L said that D and B ran downstairs and locked themselves in a room and said that D informed them she did this because of her seeing someone in the house and D could only see his nose and chin. L and said that D was freaking out and wanted them to come over to 1122 King Road, which in previous documents they said that wasn't uncommon, that Dylan would call particularly this friend and say, can you come over because I'm scared of whatever it was, right? Now, they said that, so L said he walked with E and J to 1122 King Road from Redacted's apartment on Taylor Avenue and said that Dylan and Bethany walked out of the house crying. Okay. So now let's go on to page 58. This says, Officer Smith and I then walked upstairs to the second floor. The stairs ended in a small living room. There was a sectional style couch along the east and south wall of the room. There was also a small TV in a void in the northeast corner of the room. I also saw a black backpack on the floor just east of the top of the stairs. Officer Smith then directed me down the hallway to the west bedroom on the second floor, which I later learned was Xana Kernodle's room. Before this room, there was a bathroom door on the south wall of the hallway. As I approached the room, I could see a body, later identified as Kernodle's, laying on the floor. Kernodle was laying on her back with her feet facing east and her head facing west. Kernodle had thong-type underwear on and a grey sweatshirt. There was a large amount of blood on the floor around Kernodle as well. I could see numerous wounds on Kernodle's arms, hands and face, which appeared to have been caused by an edged weapon. Just next to Kernodle on the west wall was a small white nightstand, which appeared to have been moved as it was pushed against the wall at an odd angle. There was blood on this nightstand in various locations. The bed in Kernodle's room was situated on the south wall of the bedroom, with the head of the bed appearing to be towards the west wall. I could see a male, later identified as Ethan Chapin, laying on his back in the bed with some type of blanket pulled over his midsection. Chapin's body was at an angle on the bed so that his head was up against the south wall and his feet were hanging off the bed on the north side. I could not clearly see the wounds to Chapin's head and neck area, but could see a very large amount of blood on the bed, as well as what appeared to be blood spatter on the wall next to Chapin's head and neck. I also noticed 2 large cuts to the back of Chapin's legs. The wounds appeared to be deep into the tissue, but were difficult to see due to Ethan's body position. Officer Smith then took me through the house and pointed out Dylan Mortenson's bedroom, which was situated on the southeast side of the second floor of the house. Mortenson's bedroom door opened to the kitchen area as well as the staircase, which led to the third floor of the house. Upon my brief visual inspection, Dylan's room was disheveled but did not appear to have any blood or evidence of a struggle within. I then followed Officer Smith upstairs to the third floor of the residence. The third floor consisted of 2 bedrooms and 1 bathroom. The bedroom on the west side of the floor was later determined to be Kaylee Goncalves' room. The room appeared neat and picked up. The only thing of note was the sheets on the bed were pulled back in a manner which suggested someone had been laying in the bed and then gotten out of it. Officer Smith then pointed out a small bathroom on the east side of the third floor. This bathroom shared a wall with Madison Mogen's bedroom, which was situated on the southeast corner of the third floor. As I entered this bedroom, I could see 2 females in the single bed in the room. The bed was situated along the north wall of the bedroom, and both females, later identified as Mogen and Goncalves, were laying on their backs with their heads towards the east and their feet towards the west, which was also the direction of the only door in the room. Both Goncalves and Mogen had numerous visible stab wounds and were covered in a significant amount of blood. I also later noticed what appeared to be a tan leather knife sheath laying on the bed next to Mogen's right side when viewed from the door. I remained in the room for a moment and then proceeded back outside. This is November 13th of 2022 at around 13:47 hours, so just before 2 p.m. in the afternoon. I interviewed BF, so Bethany Funk, one of the surviving roommates, okay, in regards to the death of 4 of her roommates. Now, let's just go down to where I highlighted. Bethany hung out with Maddie and Kaylee for a while in Kaylee's room. So once they'd all returned home, everybody was at different parties and doing different things that night. And once they'd all been home, she said Bethany hung out with Maddie and Kaylee for a while in Kaylee's room. Bethany and Maddie took Murphy, Kaylee's dog, out to go to the bathroom between 2:30 and 3 in the morning. So it does sound like it was Bethany Funk and Madison Mogen who took Murphy out. Bethany did not stay outside for very long as it was cold. Maddie then went to bed and watched a TV show to help her sleep, Baby Daddy. At around 4 or 4:20 hours, Bethany heard what she thought was a firework and saw a spark on the ground from under her door. Bethany then heard Murphy barking. She called, so Dylan called Bethany and stated that she'd seen someone in the house, and Bethany told her she could come down to her room and sleep with her. Dylan went to Bethany's room and went to bed. They woke up at around 1100 hours and talked to other friends who came over, and they checked on Xana and Ethan and found them deceased. Bethany originally called 911 and stated her friend was passed out and would not wake up. Bethany talked about an incident with Kaylee, who stated about a month ago she saw an unknown male up above their house to the south who was staring at her when she took Murphy out to go potty. Now, do we know if that was Kohberger or not? No, we don't know who that was. But seeing as he was in the area around the house, which could have, I don't know, like a 5-mile radius, but somewhere around the house in the area, 23 times in the weeks leading up to the murders, I would speculate that it's plausibly him standing there in the woods. It's not like he's just going to go there for the first time on November 13th of 2022. This dude would go and scope it out. He would want to study the house. Even, like he was a criminology student, busy getting his PhD. He'd been through plenty of crime scene mock-ups, and he would know exactly what to study, how to study, entry points, all the things. Remember his surveys and all of that. He would have been there many times to look at the house. And towards the back there, towards the south, there's a parking area. So he could have been standing there, right? In the wooded area. Now, somebody commented on the previous video and said, like, what are you all talking about, like the woods? I think they're picturing like a forest. It's just a wooded area. It's a couple of trees, you know what I mean? A bit of wooded tree line and rocks. That's what that would mean, right? You could see it on the drone footage as well. Okay, so now we're going here to page 62, which is very interesting and all about the DoorDash driver. So we all want to know, where did she park? Right? And so now we know. Okay, so on November 23rd of 2022 at approximately 20:39 hours, so that's 8:39 p.m., her name is Molly, as we recently found out, came to the Moscow Police Department to be interviewed about her presence in the area of 1122 King Road during the early morning hours of November 13th of 2022. She was identified as being in the area through records obtained from DoorDash via a search warrant and was confirmed as being in the area based off a Google geofence warrant, which was obtained as a result of this investigation. I was accompanied by FBI Special Agent Alex Skelton during this interview. M told me that she worked for 12 to 18 hours on the night of November 12th to 13th and received 3 orders in the King Road or Queen Road area. 2 of the orders were at redacted Queen Road apartment complex, which is immediately to the east of 1122 King Road. She said that the delivery at 1122 King Road was her final order for the evening. She said that she could not find the 1122 King Road address as the address number was hidden by the porch light, which caused her to remain in the area for approximately 15 minutes. She also stated that her Google Maps told her to go to the parking lot immediately behind 1122 King Road. She stated that she initially parked in the front of 1122 King Road and could see a female in the top left window. Okay, so let's just quickly expand this so that you can see it. So top left window. Madison Mogen's room is closest to that bathroom. She saw a female in the top left window. So she'd initially gone to the front of the house, but she wasn't too sure. It was in the area and all that, and went to park at the back, right? Okay, and so let's just continue here with this when it says, she stated she initially parked in the front of 1122 King Road. It could see a female in the top left window, the third-story bathroom. She said that she saw the same female a couple more times in the same window, and she would duck down when the DoorDash driver looked at her. She then said that she drove to the back parking lot behind 1122 King Road and parked. She stated that she could see the back courtyard area behind the house and noticed all of the lights were on. Remember, this was like at around 4 in the morning, like right before the murders. She stated that her map told her to walk into the back of the house, but she did not feel comfortable doing so because there was no path. She stated that she started to walk down the road, which runs north-south, immediately to the east of the residence. She stated a tan sedan drove next to her while she was walking. She stated there was one male driver and noticed he did not look at me. She said that he looked completely zoned and just drove by her. She later stated the driver was white with blonde or red spiky hair. Also noticed the dome light in the car was on when it went by, and later told me the male was wearing a light-colored collared shirt. She stated that she walked back up to her car and drove back to the front of 1122 King Road, at which point she saw the address numbers. She says she placed the order at the front door, took a picture, and then left at approximately 4 in the morning. During the time that the DoorDash driver was in the area of the King Road residence, the white Elantra can be seen via the King Road camera, driving back and forth on Walenta Drive, and then enter the King Road Queen Road loop at approximately 3:56 hours. At the point that the DoorDash driver pulled into the front parking lot, before she dropped the order off, the white Elantra pulled in behind her vehicle, a grey Subaru Forester, and then exited the King Road at approximately 3:58 hours. The DoorDash driver did not mention seeing the white Elantra behind her at any time. I continued to question her about her time near the residence. She told me that she walked down Queen Road at one point with her flashlight out. She said that she could be seen, or it says she can be seen doing so on the footage from redacted King Road. She also continued to tell me that the female that she saw in the upstairs bathroom window would duck down when she'd look at her. She described her as having long brown hair. She stated she could not identify the girl as one of the victims. Approximately 30 minutes into the interview, S.A. Skelton requested Molly take part in a cognitive interview. She agreed, and S.A. Skelton began the cognitive interview. During this interview, she confirmed much of the information that she already told us. She was able to remember that she had her dog with her during one of her walks in the area, but did not clarify much more in the ways of the details of the evening. We thanked her for her cooperation, offered any support she may need, and concluded our interview. Oh my word. So that is why we've seen some of that body cam where she said she's going to testify at this trial and she was the DoorDash driver. Oh my goodness. So, okay, now we're going off to page 65. We're almost there. A person, redacted, stated that redacted called her, so I'm guessing Dylan Mortensen, at approximately 11:51 hours that morning and said last night around 4 a.m. she heard and saw a man, and she and Bethany were locked in their room sleeping, and added that she wanted the friend to come over and check the house because she was too scared. She also said that Dylan heard Kaylee Goncalves scream and run up the stairs. A while later, Dylan came out of her room and saw the man staring at her. She stated the man didn't do anything to her. She stated that she stayed locked in her room and heard the side door close. So she ran into Bethany's room. Does the side door mean the sliding door? Because that's kind of the back door. Which door's the side door? But you know what I mean? What? Staring at her? They made eye contact? Like holy crap. I asked Redacted, if she asked Dylan why she didn't call anyone that night, she stated that Dylan told her it was because she was intoxicated and didn't want to believe what was going on. She also told her that the man was wearing a mask and could only see his eyes and nose. And in previous documents, we saw that they thought maybe this is a prank, from the frat house. She stated that Jay went over to the house just before her. When A arrived, she stated she went upstairs but was stopped by, so this is Hunter, by HJ, who told EA that she didn't want to see it. A went back outside and officers responded. I asked A if anything seemed out of the ordinary from what she saw. She told me there was a large party at the house on Friday, November 11th of 2022. She stated the house was a mess due to the party. I wonder if Kohberger factored that in, knowing, damn, maybe he was there that night watching as well, knowing, whoa, there's a huge party the night before. There's going to be a lot. There's always a lot, I guess, of DNA in there, you know what I mean? But I wonder if that contributed to his timeline at all. Anyway, so A also told me she saw a knife laying on the floor. So this was about Hunter grabbing the knife, thinking, oh, if there's a perp, I'm going to protect everyone, right? Now we're going off to page 67, which is about Murphy, the dog, being found quite scared. So it says, on the 13th of November of 2022, at approximately 12:05, I arrived at 112 to King Road, reference an unconscious subject. It was quickly determined the scene was likely a quadruple homicide based on our observations. When I arrived on the third floor to assess the scene, I noticed a medium-sized, curly-haired tan dog on the bed inside the western third floor bedroom, later identified as Kaylee Goncalves' room. The dog appeared timid or scared and didn't react to our presence. Due to the chaos surrounding the scene, my initial concern was preserving the scene. As part of that process, I asked one of the officers to shut the door, so the dog did not attempt to jump on the bed with any of the victims. After the area was cordoned off and the area was secure, Corporal Snyder began taking photos of the scene. At some point prior to this process, the dog moved from the bed to under the desk in Kaylee's room. Shame. After photos were completed, I asked LCSO Deputy Olson to respond and assist by taking the dog to the Humane Society of the Police for safekeeping. I collected the dog from under the desk. The dog was timid and took some coaxing to move from under the desk, but did not appear to have any obvious injuries or stains on its body or paws. Due to the amount of blood inside the bedrooms where the victims were located and the lack of blood on or around the dog, I don't believe the dog was on or around the victims. I walked the dog to the front door where Officer Warner was stationed and asked him to hold onto the dog until Deputy Olson arrived. A short time later, Deputy Olson arrived. I walked the dog from Officer Warner to Deputy Olson, who was standing in the street. At my request, Deputy Olson transported the dog to the Humane Society of the Police. Now, that same day, Jack, Kaylee's ex, was able to pick Murphy up from the Humane Society. So Murphy wasn't there for long. All right, so now we're on page 69, which is about the injuries that the victims had and discussing with the coroner, the medical examiner, whether a K-bar could have caused those because of the knife sheath being there. On June 27th of 2023, I met with TS MPD evidence technician and had item number 733 23M1025 K-bar knife temporarily released to me so I could bring it to the meeting with Dr. S. I locked item number 733 into a temporary lockbox in MPD detectives as our meeting was on the following day. Okay. On June 28th of 2023, I removed item number 733 from the lockbox in MPD detectives and brought it with me to Spokane. On June 28th of 2023 at approximately 10:30 hours, myself along with Bill Thompson, Ashley Jennings, Jeff Nye, and Ingrid Beatty met with Dr. S at the Spokane County Medical Examiner's office. Dr. S had pre-selected several photos from each victim to go over with us so that she could describe the shape of a weapon which would have caused the injuries. I removed the K-bar knife from the sealed package and showed it to Dr. S. And Dr. S stated the shape and size of the K-bar knife was consistent as being the weapon which could have caused the injuries on all four of the victims. Dr. S described how some of the wounds had 2 points on either end and how some wounds had a point on one end and a square shape at the other end. Dr. S explained how the K-bar knife could have created these wounds, depending on the depth of the injury. Dr. S explained the tip of the knife having sharp edges on either side would show a wound with points on either end. Dr. S described a deeper wound would show a point on one side and the square on the other, and how it matched the shape of the knife blade, having the single sharp edge on one side and a square edge on the other below the tip. Dr. S pointed out some of the wounds had a mark that was consistent with the guard of a K-bar knife. Now, in an upcoming episode, I'm going to talk all about Papa Roger, that Facebook account that everybody thinks is Kohberger. We're going to talk about that. We're going to debate that. I have some interesting information to share with you. That just reminded me of that because Papa Roger had posted that there's no way that the wounds would have a mark that was consistent with the guard of the K-bar knife. But the victims did have wounds consistent with the guard of a K-bar knife. Dr. S described how the wounds could look different depending on the skin stretching, the dynamics of the situation at the time, the angle or position the knife was in when it was inserted and or removed, and how a victim was moving or not moving at the time. Dr. S described some of the injuries depicted that the strength of the weapon itself and the force used would have been great. Oh my word. Now here we are on page 71, which just talks about the neighbors not hearing anything. It said, I spoke with several tenants who stated they did not hear anything strange, and their only attention to 1122 King Road was brought upon by the increased police presence through the day. I did not identify the tenants I spoke to who stated they had not been awake or alerted to any unusual sounds, people, or events. Of the tenants that I spoke with and did not identify, all gave a similar account of standard party activity and nothing out of the ordinary for a typical Saturday night or Sunday morning. Okay, now here as well, by the way, if you pause to read this, they talk about, let me just read it to you. While Captain Lanier and I were conducting door-to-door canvassing, our attention was drawn to dark red-colored drops and splotches on several portions of the walkway of the building, particularly on the upper level near apartment. And after further inspection, I could see that the same colored substance appeared to be rust, which ran down the walls and was on several door jambs as well as the siding throughout the. So this is from that apartment complex, which would be to the east of this house. I think that's what they're talking about there. And so they said that I determined the drops and splotches to be uninvolved or unrelated. Okay, now to this highlighted part here on this final page, it says, I spoke with the tenants in apartment redacted, identified as J, G, and I.B. The two stated they were at a birthday party on Blake Street, approximately 1.5 blocks away, and got to bed in the early morning hours, estimated to be approximately 4 o'clock in the morning. I asked which way they walked back from the party, and B described them as walking back west on Taylor Avenue, then cutting up a stair path just west of redacted Taylor Avenue. The stairs travel from the parking lot of Taylor Avenue up to Queen Road, facing straight at the gravel parking lot of 1122 King Road. Both B and G stated they did not see anyone outside or pass anyone as they were walking. I asked if there was still a party or music going on at 1122 King Road when they walked by, and they stated there was. Oh my word, like what? Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, and they did not hear anything that alarmed them in any way. There was still a party, according to these people walking past, at 4 in the morning. You know what I mean? Like how much they say the lights were on, music was playing, and that's why I speculated earlier. Can you imagine if that Britney Spears song was playing? And that is the reason that Kohberger was listening to it while wearing gloves and putting trash into baggies, separate baggies in the kitchen right before they arrested his ass. Okay, so that is what we have for today. I hope that you found that helpful. If you didn't, sorry about that, but I hope that you did, because sure, if we had to read through every single page, there's a lot of info there, some not relevant, some not all that interesting. You know, like when it's search warrants, I applied for the search warrant, then I got a thumb drive, then I transferred this thumb drive to this person. There's many documents like that. So what we've looked at so far in video 1 of the series, again, was we looked at Bryan Kohberger's police interview. They described what he said in the 45 minutes. Of course, we would love the full transcript of that interview, and we'll work on getting that, right? And then in the second video, we also looked at what inmates said. In the second video, we looked at creepy coincidences occurring near the residence in the weeks leading up to the murders. And in this third video, we looked at the night of the murders, the timeline, the crime scene, and the autopsies, the reports of the victims who lost their lives in the most nightmarish way possible. They're just in their house, doing their thing. And this intruder came in, which is why he was charged with burglary, because he trespassed with criminal intent and then took 4 lives. Now, why do you think he did not attack the surviving roommates? I think it's because he was exhausted. It sounds like Kaylee and Xana fought so hard. Oh my goodness. So that's a lot of stabbing that went on. 50 stab wounds to Xana, 34 to Kaylee. We don't know the exact number to Ethan and Maddie, but add all of that up and let's say it's like 100. It's a lot. It's a lot, right? Okay, so I hope that you go and get some fresh air, some sunshine, get your mind off all of this. Thank you for following this with me. Remember, these are initial documents from the initial investigation, right? And so I'm grateful that we have them, but we just got to keep that in mind. Now, let me know in the comments below what else you're curious about. There are certain topics that I'm not going to explore, like some of the suspects initially, because they're like, oh, my word, look at this one. Look at this one. Let's go to his house. Let's ask him things and see if he's sus. There's just no reason for me to do that. I'm sure there's other people doing it. You can gladly watch it there. Right? I'm going to focus on what I can bring that is, as factual as possible, and where I speculate, I will tell you I'm speculating. Like I did, like saying, I think that was Kohberger in the woods. Yeah, in the weeks leading up to the murders. I think so. Some people don't think so. I do. I think he scoped out the area, the house, and everything in a very premeditated way. I mean, to think that he bought the K-bar knife while still at home in Pennsylvania in March of 2022, and then moved to Pullman, Washington on June 23rd of 2022, and then started scoping out the house or the area at least. Okay. And then committed the murders on November 13th of 2022. I mean, July, August, September, October, November 13th. He wasn't even there for all that long. And a lot happened in that time. So that's all very interesting. But let's leave it at that for today. Otherwise, I'm going to carry on and on and on. This has been long enough. I will see you in the next one. In the meantime, stay safe.